The Incredibles is great. This early Pixar film helped establish the studio's foundation as a powerhouse of industry, while also bringing higher caliber storytelling to the relatively untapped at the time superhero genre. This first film was constantly praised for years and years, and one topic on everyone's mind for roughly a decade was, where's the sequel? And if you were around on the internet at any time in the early 2010s, this was often brought into question, especially as Disney and Pixar started announcing sequels to Cars and Finding Nemo. It didn't take too many years after the release of a second Cars film, however, for Incredibles 2 to be greenlit. The studio opted to wait for Brad Bird's return, as he had recently delved into the live-action space. But there wasn't a doubt that a return to the world of The Incredibles wouldn't be massive when it would eventually happen. And yeah, the hype was unavoidable. This hit theaters a couple years before the pandemic, so the money was rolling in at the time. This was Pixar's highest grossing film up until Inside Out 2, and it still holds the record for highest opening weekend for an animated film. The film itself got great critical reception and audiences enjoyed it. I know some opinions of this film have soured in recent years, but I still love it and these characters, and I know many others do. In the lead up to this film, when information and artwork started to make the rounds, there was an ever so prevalent question, however. Why are these characters not aging up? And the characters do look the same here. Despite the animation changing a bit and these characters conforming to the times technologically, the film itself, in universe, picks up right where the last one left off, and the family still needs to take on the Underminer. With this movie making truckloads of cash and a mid-2020s push for Pixar to revisit some of their most popular worlds, the question became when and not if an Incredibles 3 would grace our screens. And at the D23 Expo in 2024, it was officially announced. We now know the sequel will release in the summer of 2028, and the question remains as to what this film will be about. We are sure to hear some news at this year's D23, including the fates of our lead characters' ages. And despite the wishes of most surrounding this film, I don't think any sort of crazy time jump is necessary, if any at all. Time jumps in animation are not necessary. That's part of the beauty of the medium. This is why The Simpsons can keep the same formula and utilize the same school setting for decades. Though it can also limit audience interests, because with ongoing movies and television series, part of the charm is seeing characters grow and change. Sometimes they can even age with you. In animation, change seldomly occurs. That's why when Pixar went on to age up Andy in the third Toy Story, many were surprised and open to the story potential this initiated. And for this third film, it was quintessential to the story and perfectly melded the themes of the franchise thus far. Pixar also aged up its characters in the Cars film, and while in the second film it was just keeping up with the actual time passed in our world, the third film makes it an actual part of the plot, as Lightning McQueen has now aged out of his career. Inside Out 2 was also incredibly successful, and that aged up Riley and gave the lead emotions plenty of growing pains to overcome. While characters in all of these films have aged up anywhere from a few years to past a decade, the identity of the franchise from a visual perspective especially remains consistent, because the lead characters as toys or cars or emotions don't have drastically changing appearances. Andy or Riley getting older is much more palatable because they have far less screen time than Woody and Joy, and they aren't really the faces of their respective franchises. If we start seeing adult versions of Dash and Violet like everyone hopes, this is all of a sudden a totally different property. Not to say the name Incredibles and the red costume with the logo aren't going to get people into the theater regardless, but from a business perspective, I can only imagine the reluctance to change their ages, especially as it would contradict current theme park attractions utilizing what would be completely outdated designs. But I suppose this wouldn't be completely unheard of for Disney parks. But speaking in terms of business is not what you want to hear when discussing the art of filmmaking, I can acknowledge. So let's talk about the story and why a big time jump isn't necessary. As we saw with Toy Story 3, the application of time is an easy way to open up endless pools of storylines. Just catching up with adult versions of everyone could fill the first act and be endlessly engaging. But I think from a storytelling perspective, there is still so much potential with our characters in their current form. Especially as, spoilers, the second movie ends with supers being legal again. I feel like this franchise really is this franchise because they're superheroes and they're superhero children. If it's a group of heroes where everyone is at least 16, you just have every comic book team assembled on the big screen ever. The work-life balance of hero work can be explored with two working parents. We could see how this affects Dash and Violet if they're even allowed to pursue these ambitions as children, and how it affects their youth in things like school and relationships and sports for Dash. And maybe it's a hot take, but at the moment, I don't know if I want to see a grown-up talking Jack because he was fully designed around his infancy. This isn't even mentioning how a time jump could potentially move us away from that retro, futuristic 60s aesthetic. Maybe not too far, but it could potentially, and that would strip this franchise of some more of its identity, I fear. But I'd just really be interested in seeing new heroes reach great heights and this world adjust to this class of people since they'd been away for 15 years. Maybe we'll even see another family of superheroes since Bob and Helen couldn't have been the only heroes to have children, since we know that they're all over the world. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if we heard a little of Bob or Helen's life prior to superhero work, or at least their youth, to tie into the children's arcs, assuming they've had these powers all their lives. And again, all of this is potential in the current time period of this universe. But playing into that realm, I feel the grandparents could make an appearance. I feel like there's some fun things you can do with that. I'm really just spitballing ideas here though. I said this a while back, but I'm hoping the villain of this movie is another superpowered individual or group, and we can see some sort of conflict in ideals. And while this could be in any time period for this family, I would want to see another movie where Bob and Helen, and we'll throw Frozen in there, are at least close to their primes. They're older than the glory days, but as we saw in Incredibles 2, they weren't having any problems in living up to their superhero status. And while this very well could be a plot point in the third movie, I don't think we need to jump forward 10 years to see it. There could just be some new hotshots. But bad faith superpowered heroes could play into the concerns some have with the return and re-legalization of superheroes, so it, again, say it with me, fits where the timeline is now. It actually makes more sense being right after they were legalized. I do feel that this franchise will inevitably see aged up versions of the main cast at some point. Don't get me wrong, this brand is too profitable to lay dormant forever, and this would be a good way to bridge the gap. And they can set up some sort of sequel series of films. If modern Hollywood is anything to go off of, it's that or live action. And we know which way Pixar will head if they have a choice. That or they spin off new superheroes introduced in the third. Either way, in the present with this film, I'm pretty opposed to this becoming a lopsided trilogy timeline-wise. It would be jarring, especially with the second film picking up right where the first left off. I honestly wouldn't be mad if the third film starts with the chase at the end of the second. While again, we can go back to the Toy Story original trilogy and say it does the lopsided thing. Again, these characters look the exact same, so doing this with The Incredibles would be completely different in my eyes. There are ways this could work out. Obviously, I trust the story will be worth telling. I just think it's an uphill battle if it's messing with the formula so drastically. But I am really interested to see Peter Sohn in the director's chair for this one. He was chosen by Brad Bird to carry out the vision for this franchise, and obviously Bird is still heavily involved in a big way here. Also, side note, I have been thinking a lot about who the lead for this movie will be, with Bob leading the first and Helen in the second. Both serve in major roles of both films, obviously, but I've been feeling it goes back to a Mr. Incredible-led movie, but I could also see it being about Violet since she was given more to do in the second film. This film is still a couple years out, but I really can't wait to hear more about it in just a few weeks. Footage should probably be shown and we'll get some concept art and a synopsis. Maybe there will be a time jump. I'm sure they can make it work. I just strongly disagree with the sentiment that it is a necessity when this new age of supers has yet to be explored. Let me know what you all think about the timeline, but also who you think the protagonist of this film will be, and what are just some things you want from this movie. I look forward to talking about this film more, and I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.